Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this almost final session of this fantastic conference. We have 5 speakers this afternoon, 4 in the room and 1 online, and the theme of the talks is impacts of policies and programs and implementation. In the room, we have Oluwafemi Oyedeji from the Nigerian Institute of Social and Economic Research, Pepan Shrinamakers from the World Vegetable Center, Reshma Roshania from the National Council of Applied Economic Research, Aklima Parvin from IFPRI, and Devika Lakhote, International Initiative for Impact Evaluation, who is online. So we'll have plenty of time after the talks. Each talk is about 10 minutes to keep the speakers to time. They have signs at the front. So let's get started. So I'd like to welcome Oluwafemi. Sorry, I have to find the right page because things moved. Oluwafemi Oyedeji, who is going to talk about the effect of maize value web intensification on nutritional security of farming households in Nigeria, a gender disaggregated approach.
Good afternoon. So firstly, I would like to extend my sincere appreciation to ANH team for providing the platform to have this research presented. Also, I would like to appreciate my organization, the Nigerian Institute of Social and Economic Research, which is the research policy think tank for the federal government of Nigeria, for approving this trip, considering the fact that the research I'm about to present is just extracted from my doctoral dissertation, so not from the institute. So let me just go straight away while I wait for the, okay, fine. So this is the outline of the presentation. So you all agree with me that majority of the findings that have been presented so far during the conference have already painted the global picture in terms of food security and malnutrition crisis across the globe. So I will be speaking directly with respect to the context of Nigeria when it comes to food security, malnutrition, as well as the maize production. So I would first like to establish that Nigeria is the most populous country in Africa, and the country have actually been grappling with food insecurity and malnutrition crisis for quite a while, which is not really something new. So to buttress this, in 2023, FAO reported, 2025, I mean, FAO reported that about 26.5 million of Nigerians are experiencing acute food insecurity. And interestingly, World Food Program, they projected that by 2025 agricultural lean season, which is between June and August, by then we'll be having about 33.1 million Nigerians that will be experiencing malnutrition. So this is really an alarming increase of about 7 million. So within this context of food insecurity comes maize, which is a major staple crop, especially in Nigeria. And it is interesting to know that Nigeria is, it ranks high among the top 3 producers. In fact, consistently for a number of years, we have been the second top maize producer, just behind South Africa in terms of total production. However, just recently, last year, we are overtaken by Tanzania, which I believe it's temporary, because as giants of Africa, we are coming up to take over our place. Then also, in terms of population, it is interesting to know that we are over 230 million, so which shows how much we contribute to the global figure. And that's 230 million, over 230 million is about 3% of global population. So that shows the significance of the country when it comes to what we contribute, what we offer to the total production globally. So though the maize production have actually been on the increase in terms of technology that have been adopted, innovations within that space, but we cannot deny the fact that the value chain issues still persist. But that will be a story for another day. So let me go straight to the concept of biomass value web. Now, biomass value web, it's basically talking about maximizing the use of crops. So in layman language, I can describe it as an agricultural system that promotes or maximize the usage of crops, minimizing reduction, as well as creating economic opportunities in order to ensure improved livelihood for farmers. So it is interesting to know that globally there is increasing demand for biomass-based products like feed, fuel, bioenergy, and so on and so forth. So with this increasing demand, it calls for a drastic measure in order to ensure the livelihood of poor households are secured. So in that regard, the conventional value chain approach, which is more of like a linear analysis, is no longer efficient nor effective. So this brings on board the biomass value web, which analyzes the interrelations and synergies between several value chains. And the outputs we are looking forward to with respect to it is actually maximizing the usage potential of biomass crops. So within the same biomass value web, one can assess profits and opportunities for value addition, as well as increased income generating activities. And also, as I mentioned earlier, maize is an important staple crop in Nigeria. So the next question will be, why maize out of all the crops or staple crops we have? Firstly, the fact that we produce much does not really mean that we should be consuming much. However, interestingly, the consumption of Nigeria annually is over 12 million metric tons, so which shows the huge consumption of the meat. Rarely will you get to an household in the local community without having maize-based food. In fact, in some parts of Nigeria, the absence or shortage of maize is an indicator of famine to them, considering the fact that the crop is usually the first to be cultivated yearly during the agricultural season. So this web here depicts the potential of maize value web in the context of Nigeria. Here we can see over 20 major uses of maize. So which I wanted to have that at the back of your mind in order to compare that to the findings from the study. So understanding the maize value web, in summary, we have various parts of maize, but the key parts are actually displayed here. So we have the grain, the stover, which consists of stalks and leaves, as well as the cob for various uses. So let me just go straight to the objectives of the study. So the main objective of the study is to examine the effects of value web intensification on the nutritional security of households. So specifically, the different uses of maize within the biomass value web among the male and female headed households. Then examine the factors that drive intensification in this maize value web. Then analyze the nutritional security of households, as well as then lastly, to examine the effects of maize value web intensification on nutritional security. The study centers on the potter's value chain because literally potter's value chain provided the foundation for understanding the various activities that is embedded in the production as well as necessary support for a particular product. So critically examining this potter's value chain, three main strands of concepts that comes out are the global commodity chain, the global value chain, as well as the global production network. The global commodity chain basically is talking about organization of the network of production activities that is ongoing within a chain. While the global value chain is talking about the distribution, the value creation and addition within the chain. The global production networks is talking about the overall arrangement of all chains, talking about the synergies, the interrelations between the several value chains in order to ensure maximum usage of crops. This is the conceptual framework of the study, showing the determinants or drivers of biomass value web intensification, as well as the relationship between socioeconomic characteristics, as well as the intervening variables or moderators, and the outcome variable, which outcome variable of interest here is the nutritional security of household. So the analytical framework leveraged on by the study includes the Affinda-Eichmann index, which is primarily designed for estimating market concentration. But in the context of the study, it's adapted to estimate the level of intensification within this biomass value web, that is the index of a usage, if I can use that. Then the study also leveraged on the composite nutritional security, so which constitutes four main the food frequency, then the household per capita food expenditure, then the household per capita calorie intake, and the household dietary diversity. So these four indicators were standardized following the same approach used in human development reports, so which is presented here. Okay, so the last objective, which is the effect of maize value web, was actually analyzed using the, this presentation, this slide that is being displayed does not really correlate with the final one I submitted. However, the findings revealed that those that intensify the usage of maize, for example, for the gender disaggregation, which I want to believe we have here, it was found that female-headed households intensify the usage of maize more than the male-headed households. Then in terms of nutritional security, though marginal, they also have better nutritional security than the male-headed household. So for the drivers of usage intensification, the significant variables that drives intensification within the maize value web are the age of household head, then the education in years of schooling, then also the farm size, as well as cultivating maize as a main crop, and infrastructural index. So in a nutshell, the findings have showed that there is low level of intensification of in biomass value web from both male and female-headed household. And also, there is significant influence of value web intensification on nutritional security for both male and female-headed households. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much for that interesting talk. Next, I would like to introduce Pepijn Schijnemakers from the World Vegetable Centre, who is going to talk about the impact of home garden interventions on the diets and nutrition of urban residents, evidence from Dhaka in Bangladesh.
Yeah, thank you, Liz. First of all, I would like to acknowledge the contribution of the co-authors, Sandhya Kumar, who was with World Veg, but now is with C4, and Mohammed Nasir Uddin, who is with Grameen Bikash Foundation in Dhaka. And the donors, of course, this is part of the CDR programs for food frontiers and security, as well as we receive support from the CDR program on diets, better diets and nutrition. Okay, let me get started. Food insecurity, food is increasingly becoming an urban problem. Urbanization rate is very high across the world and is affecting food insecurity dramatically. Urban populations are affected, of course, by all three forms of malnutrition, and that you see very clearly in a city like Dhaka. In Dhaka is the world's fourth largest city by some estimates, 25 million people, and is growing very fast. Now, in Dhaka, like previous studies have shown that fruit and vegetable consumption is particularly low among several population groups. So that's an issue that would need to be addressed. Now, in Bangladesh, we have a long experience of home garden interventions, and there have been many home garden interventions by NGOs and many impact studies that show wonderful effects of home gardens in the rural areas. However, there has been no like impact studies of home gardens in an urban area. Now, some people say that home gardens are maybe not suitable for urban areas because space is so limited in a city like Dhaka. Water is a constraint, people have no time because they have jobs, and plus there's markets available where you can purchase fruits and vegetables. So why would we introduce gardening in a city like that? Now, we want to test that, and so we used the Dhaka Food Systems Project as a case study here. That was a project funded by the Netherlands government, implemented by FAO and Wageningen University. And it trained about 5,000 urban households in gardening, mostly women. 85% of them were women. They gave them training for 3 days. They gave them seed packages. They gave them some fertilizers and some gardening tools. So the intervention support was minimal, you can say. This is what we use as a study is a kind of a non-experimental setup. We collected data in 2022 before the intervention started for control and an intervention group, and then exactly one year later, we collected exactly the same data. So we have 254 controls and 425 treatment households. Now, those treatment households include households that do gardening in different environments. So any type of, it could be a rooftop garden, that could be along the river banks, in the small plots, even on balconies, or even in containers somewhere located. It doesn't matter. We estimated average treatment effects using a double difference estimator. Now, primary outcomes, we looked at fruit and vegetable consumption using a 7-day frequency recall, and we look at dietary diversity using the diet quality questionnaire. But in addition to this, we kind of traced the whole impact pathway from the intervention to knowledge generation, adoption of technologies, to those primary outcomes. In total, we measured actually 38 different outcome variables, which is very extensive. Let me jump immediately to the results. Some people indeed say that, gardening is constrained, but if we ask the gardeners who are currently gardening in the baseline, and there were many households had some gardening in the baseline already, when we ask them what are the key challenges to doing gardening in Dhaka, actually the very, very clear lack of knowledge and skills, insect and pest diseases, lacking inputs, including soils. These were the key challenges to people that felt like that is really constrains them in urban gardening, which is very surprising because if you look at lack of land, lack of water, not enough time, what I said in the introduction, were not mentioned as serious challenges in the perception of the people. So that's an important one. We looked at the multiple benefits of urban gardening. Of course, people say, the gardens help me to eat more fruits and vegetables. Both the gardeners in the control and treatment group perceive that. But there's many, and income is not so important. So that's also very clear. Urban gardening is not about income. But there are multiple other interesting benefits that people mentioned. For example, joy of growing plants. Making the house look better. It brings my family together. More interaction with neighbors, a sense of personal achievements, sense of personal peace, sense of self-worth. All those things were reported by almost like 90% of the 90 to 100% of the households confirmed that those benefits are important to them when doing urban gardening. Let me come to the average treatment effects. And I said we have 38 different outcomes. I present a selection of them. That could be biased here, of course, but these are the interesting ones. Not all of this, I did not choose all the significant ones. But what we see here is that this gardening intervention did lead to a significant increase in the dietary diversity score, and the minimum dietary diversity for women. Quite significant there. We also see a small improvement in the nutritional knowledge, a higher frequency, right, in the number of the portions of vegetables eaten per day, almost one additional portion of vegetables eaten a day as a result of this intervention. We don't find much effect on has a garden because many households already did some kind of a gardening, had some plants. increase in the number of gardening practices applied. I want to jump to the last two rows because what we see is a significant decrease in the amount of money spent on actually buying fruits and vegetables from the market. And probably as a result of that, and that's the only adverse effect that we find in this study, is that we find the NCD risk score, basically the ultra-processed food, the gorilla in the room, increased. So as a result, they spent less money on fruits and vegetables, and some of that money that was saved was probably spent on more ultra-processed food. Yeah, that's an important result. Strengths and limitations, I think this is one of the few rigorous impact studies of urban gardening interventions. I think it's one of the strengths also that we look at the multiple benefits of gardening. Of course, here we are very limited. Limitation is the short time between the baseline and end line. We need to look at the sustainability of a program like this. This is really key. And there's some selection bias here because many of the participants in a program like that, gardening in an urban area is not suitable for everyone. So I think that there's some self-selection here as well, that those people involved in this programming, but there are many, probably have more interest in gardening to start with. Conclusion, so I think that gardening support provided to urban residents clearly help them to eat a more diverse diet. And the pathway is not so much that garden gives them a lot of fruits and vegetables to eat, but probably they also change behavior in other ways as well. There are multiple social and personal benefits that should be valued in programs like that, which are really important. Space and time were not the main constraints for urban gardeners. I think the main challenges were lack of knowledge and skills and controlling pests and diseases. If you think about it, then it's not so different from a rural household garden because they face exactly the same constraints, which is interesting. So many of those constraints can, of course, be addressed through straightforward extension support, but the problem is, of course, in cities, there's no extension support available. So that's really what we need to think about, how to support those gardeners in cities better. They do need support, that's clear, but how to do it, maybe digital methods to support, I'm not sure. So let me come to the end there. Thank you so much. The study was already published in the Journal of Food Security, and it's open access, so you can access it there. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Pipin. That was really interesting. Next, we have Reshma Roshania from the National Council of Applied Economic Research. And she's going to talk about the expansion of the public distribution system and impacts on household food consumption. So longitudinal evidence from India.
Great, thank you so much. I'm very happy to be presenting this work to you. My co-author is Sonal Desai, also from NCAR. Okay, so India's public distribution system, or the PDS, is the world's largest food safety net program, providing in-kind food transfers to over 800 million people. It is cereal-centric in its commodities, so it primarily distributes rice, wheat, and sugar. The government is rolling out distribution of fortified rice, and there's a lot of variation among states. So some states also provide pulses, edible oil, and coarse grains such as millets. The program started before independence, but in the late 90s is when, and specifically targeting the poor. So it delineated 3 categories of households. First were the below poverty line households. Second were the poorest 10% of the poor, so the Antyodaya Anna Yojana households. And then the third was the above poverty line households. And so each category has different ration cards, each with different levels of entitlements in terms of quantity of grain provided, as well as the subsidy amounts. And then in 2013, the National Food Security Act was enacted, and this marked a huge expansion of the program for the 2 categories of the poor households that I mentioned. So the BPL households have been renamed to priority households, and then as well as the AAY households. And so this expansion was achieved through two main means. One was increasing coverage. So the target was to reach 2/3 of the population, 75% of the rural population, 50% of the urban population, and then two, higher subsidy amounts. So the prices per kilogram substantially reduced for food grain. Then in 2020, as a response to COVID, the central government announced that for the priority and AAY households, food grain entitlements would be free of cost, and this policy still continues to today, so free food grains for these ration card holders. So for many households in India, food transfer entitlements expanded substantially, and our research question is, how has the expansion of PDS entitlements influenced food consumption patterns at the household level? And we do this using two waves of longitudinal data before and after these phases of expansion. We believe this is an important question since it can inform the debate on whether cereal-centric food transfers simply increase consumption of cereals, thereby decreasing dietary diversity, or if they can act as income transfers and improve dietary diversity through increased purchase and consumption of other healthy foods. There's evidence to support both sides of this, and we contribute by utilizing longitudinal data to understand how households change consumption over time based on entitlement eligibility. So for the methods, we use 3 waves of the India Human Development Survey, which is a nationally representative longitudinal panel of over 40,000 households. So wave 1 was conducted in 2004-05, wave 2 was in 2011, so just before the expansion, and then wave 3 was 22 to 24, just after expansion. It's a multi-topic survey, covers many modules, including the type of ration card owned, as well as monthly household consumption and expenditure. And our final sample size for this was 36,783 households. So the main exposure we're interested in is whether a household experienced expansion in entitlements, and I'll come back to that to define it further in just a bit. Our outcome is per capita monthly consumption of the food groups listed here. So the PDS commodities we present in kilograms or liters, so that's rice, wheat, other cereals, pulses, oil, as well as sugar. And then the remaining food items we present in rupees, so vegetables, fruits, dairy, meat, eggs, and processed foods. Also, just a disclaimer here is that the third wave data are still being finalized, so we're using preliminary weights here. The results are subject to change a bit. We used a fixed effects design, which allows us to control for all of the observed household characteristics that don't change over time, such as state of residence and caste, but as well as the unobserved household characteristics, such as, for example, cultural preferences for rice over wheat. So we're estimating the change in consumption of a food group over time within a household whose entitlements expanded. We also include time fixed effects, and so that can capture, for example, overall changes in the food environment or food price shocks that all households experience. And then the time variant covariates we include are total household consumption and household size. So descriptively here, we can see how ration card ownership changed over time. And for the purposes of presentation, I'm just lumping together priority and AAY households and then just calling them priority. So there's a large increase in priority card ownership between the second and third waves, as you can see. About half of them owned priority cards before, and the remaining half were new priority card members, priority card holders, sorry. And then this illustrates here what we mean by expansion. So those in the color streams experienced expansion of entitlements, either through existing cards that were then eligible for, for lower subsidies, for higher subsidies, so lower cost, or new eligibility. So it's for about these 62% of households that were interested in estimating change in consumption over time. So when we look at the profile of households with expanded entitlements, the lower wealth quintiles and rural households had higher expansion, and as I mentioned, this was the explicit target of the program to reach these groups. But also we can see almost over 30% of high wealth quintile households also experienced expansion in entitlements, and then among the social groups, it's the marginalized scheduled caste and scheduled tribes that experience the highest expansion in entitlements. So now looking at trends in per capita monthly consumption, we can see an overall decline in cereal consumption, especially rice and other cereals for both groups, and this is consistent with other national sources of data. There's a decline in cereal consumption, but we can also see households with expanded entitlements have a much higher consumption of rice, whereas the opposite is true for wheat. For all of the other food groups, an overall increase in per capita monthly consumption is observed. So pulses, oil, sugar, vegetables and fruit, and we notice higher consumption among the not expanded entitlement group versus the expanded entitlement group, and animal source foods of dairy, meat, and eggs. And meat and eggs are the only food group where those in the expanded group have higher consumption than those not in the expanded group, and this is likely due to cultural differences, cultural preferences of different social groups. And then also a sharp increase in processed food consumption for both groups. We don't have data on this from wave 1. So now looking at the within household effects. So consumption of the foods distributed by PDS increased over time within households. So households that experienced expansion of entitlements consumed more rice, wheat, other cereals, pulses, sugar, and oil compared to their previous consumption. And again, this is controlling for the effects of time. And then households that experience expansion also consume more vegetables, dairy, and processed food compared to earlier, while there's no difference in fruit or meat and egg consumption. And we really see the highest effect sizes here for processed foods and dairy. So in conclusion, I'm just going to start by mentioning a couple of limitations. You may have noticed the food categories didn't allow us to, for example, separate tubers from vegetables, or ultra-processed foods from processed foods, or vitamin A-rich fruits and vegetables. And so that's why we weren't really able to model dietary diversity as an outcome. But as a strength, which I don't have here, these categories are still perhaps better than measuring caloric intake as an outcome, which a lot of the existing evidence does. And then secondly, as I mentioned earlier, there's really high variation among states. So in Tamil Nadu, for example, in the south, there's universal PDS, and that's been the case for years. But because of our sample size, we couldn't really look at that interstate variation. But again, a strength is, we were able to use a longitudinal design. So to summarize our findings, our analysis supports evidence for both hypothesized pathways. So expansion of entitlements, mainly grain, does lead to higher consumption of grain, as well as other PDS commodities. And it also consumption of other foods, both healthy and unhealthy. So in terms of policy implications, if households are consuming more of what's distributed through the PDS, an important policy implication is to provide more nutritious foods through the PDS. And so all states should really be considering providing pulses and millets, and in a meaningful quantity. So right now, it's just 1 to 2 kilograms per household per month. Or implementation of food vouchers or cash transfers for perhaps some of the more perishable commodities. And then secondly, as the right to food activists have long been advocating, universalizing PDS would address some of the targeting challenges today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was really clear and interesting. I'd like to welcome our next speaker, Aklima Parvin from the International Food Policy Research Institute, IFPRI, who is going to talk about bridging agriculture, nutrition and gender to enhance nutrition-sensitive agriculture, a government-led randomized controlled trial in rural Bangladesh.
Slide. Good afternoon, and I'm pleased to present the our research study, Bridging Agriculture, Nutrition and Gender to Enhance Nutrition-Sensitive Agriculture, a government-led randomized control trial in rural Bangladesh. So based on IFPRI's Bangladesh Integrated Household Survey 2011 and 2012 data analysis, we found that agricultural diversity is positively associated with increased household and child dietary diversity. Women empowerment measured by WIA also correlates with dietary diversity. Moreover, agricultural dietary diversity also correlates with women's empowerment. So agriculture nutrition gender linkage project, the objective was to identify action and investment in agriculture that would lead simultaneously on improve agriculture development and nutrition, and also make recommendation on how to strengthen pathways, women's empowerment in agriculture domain. So to rigorously evaluate impacts, if we design this RCT and it implemented in 16 sub-districts of Bangladesh, and the research targeted both men and women from farm household, and Angel tested 4 components, treatment arm N, which is actually delivering nutrition behavior change communication, treatment arm A, delivering on agriculture production, and treatment arm AN, agriculture combining with nutrition BCC, and the final treatment arm ANG, which brings both agriculture production, nutrition BCC, and gender together. So how was Angel implemented? So Angel training package actually was developed, engaging with different government agency, also with Helen Keller International was the technical partner, and also IFRI was involved. And you can see in agriculture module there had stronger focuses on homestead garden production practice and high value crops, livestock fisheries, crops and non-crops, and many other contents covered. And nutrition content focused on IUICF, maternal nutrition, and hygiene practices. For gender training package, we use Helen Keller International Nurture, which looked on gender norms, attitude, and dynamics, and it also focused on joint decision making as it relates to agriculture, nutrition sensitive agriculture. So, sorry. So for Angel, as I said earlier, we targeted both men and women from the farm household, and each household actually received training at least 1 per month per component over the 17-month training period. And the training on agriculture and production was delivered by sub-assistant agriculture officer and community nutrition volunteer, and the gender training delivered by Helen Keller personnel. And the training actually observed by the sub-district agriculture officer, and also there is an extra layer of oversight from IFRI Agriculture Policy Support Unit and Helen Keller International, who actually conducted field visits and check-in calls before training. So let's look on the barriers. So at men's member of the training, ad hoc basis contextual work, and actually engage in during harvesting period led to absences, and also the delivery of the training quality at the initial stage was challenges. Despite of these challenges, there are some facilitators to influence the success. So actually implementation fidelity, in addition to the regular monitoring, there are so 2 interministerial committee formed at the design phase who also oversight the training and the household approach. This actually brings collective understanding among the household, which influence the uptake. So I'd like to share some key results. I'd like to acknowledge the Angel papers in case agriculture production diversity and quality. I'd like to acknowledge the authors of this paper. So I'd like to share some results, though some of them are statistically significant. I think these are relative to this conference. So agriculture production knowledge. So you can see the impact on the agriculture production knowledge. So this slide show all the treatment that included agriculture increases improved knowledge, and the impacts are larger for women than men. This is because women attended more training session. So this slide shows the impacts on the nutrition knowledge improvement. All the treatment that included nutrition had greater impact. For women, you can see the impacts are not that much high. It's small because the baseline level was a little bit, knowledge level is higher. For men, you can see a slightly higher because their baseline level knowledge was lower. Here is the measuring of the dietary diversity, like if a household is consume different food group with a range of 0 to 12 food groups. You can see the non-crop productions, egg and milk productions. So Titmenam that included agriculture increases egg and dairy productions. You can show the product effect size are large for eggs like 58 to 88%, and for dairy it is 27 to 88%. This shows the women's and men's empowerment on the angel treatment. So in the control group, only 25% women are empowered compared to 39% of women. For women's empowerment outcome, there are significant positive impacts from all treatment arms relative to the control group. And the prevalence of empowerment women increased by 8 to 13 percentage points. On the other hand, for men's empowerment, there are no significant impacts except from the treatment arm N. So this slide shows the gender parity. A household is classified as achieving gender parity if the woman is either empowered or achieved at least the same empowerment score as the primary man does. You can see treatment arm AN and treatment arm ANG treatments have positive impacts on gender parity. So I'd like to share some policy implication of Angel. Angel represents a pioneer effort in Bangladesh, especially this is the first randomized control trial led by Bangladesh government. And it provides a proof of concept of integrated approach. Integration of nutrition in the extension services have the potential to scale up the program using the extension workforce. Also, this proof of concept of integration nutrition actually give a understanding of the family dynamics and uptake of the result. And recognizing its success, government actually approved the Angela scale up. However, discussions are ongoing with the government and DP for expansion. So I'd like to recap my presentation as a reminder. So Angel actually led to increased nutrition knowledge, agriculture production knowledge, production of selected non-rice crop, increased consumption of food with high nutrient values, improve household dietary diversity, women's and men empowerment, improve gender parity. And the final message I'd like to deliver, combining training on agriculture, nutrition, gender sensitization, had greater impacts on diet quality. Thank you, and I'd like to thank ANH for my participation, also Better Diet and Nutrition Program of AFRI to ensure my participation. Thank you.
Thank you, Akima. What a very interesting trial with great results. I'd like to introduce our last and final speaker who is online. That's Devika Lakote from the International Initiative for Impact Evaluation. She is going to talk to us about innovations in evaluation, leveraging remote sensing nutrition and health solutions. Hi, Devika. You can hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. I'll hand over to you now.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me at this event. And unfortunately, I couldn't be there in person, but it's really exciting to see everyone gathered there and discussing ANH. Today, I'm going to talk about leveraging remote sensing and machine learning for agriculture, nutrition, and health solutions. I am here on behalf of the International Initiative for Impact Evaluation, and I'm going to be talking about a few of our projects that we ended up using these technologies and some innovative methods to evaluate agricultural interventions. Next slide, please. So why remote sensing? And, it's also known as geospatial data, Earth observation data. I'm sure a lot of you have worked with it or heard about it. And why did we decide to do this? I think the main thing was we wanted to answer an important question, which was that did agricultural production in non-traditional farming areas such as wetlands, ponds, deserts increase because of our interventions at 3IE? thereby contributing to food security in highly vulnerable regions. So starting with this question, we had a few different interventions and programs that we started off either as traditional randomized control trials or some other form of traditional survey methods. However, it so happened that remotely sensed data ended up playing a pivotal role in enhancing the evaluation and driving informed evidence-based decision-making in this space in food systems and nutrition. And this is for a couple of reasons. First, it enabled us to conduct impact evaluations in fragile or inaccessible contexts, as I will outline as I talk about our projects. And the second thing was that it enhanced findings from our traditional impact evaluations. So there were things that maybe if we had just done our standard survey and our standard impact evaluation, we wouldn't have been able to uncover. So it added an additional layer of inference to our study and helped us learn more about the context. Today, I'll talk about 4 case studies that are based on evaluation of farming and food system interventions in arid, wetland, and aquaculture zones. The first one is the Agricultural Intensification Program in Niger. The second is Agricultural Encouragement and Training Program in Bangladesh. Supply side interventions for marshland agriculture in Sierra Leone and Guinea. And then the last one is a currently ongoing aquaculture project for food security in Malawi. Next slide, please. So the first case, which is where it all started for us and for 3IE to get into the space of using geospatial data, is the case in Niger, where we were studying the impact of irrigation perimeters on agriculture. So as you can see here in this picture, in October 2014, this is the 2016, sorry, is the area of intervention. And they basically, the main intervention was that they built an agricultural irrigation perimeter to encourage the farmers to use irrigation for their crops, especially in the dry season. However, soon after the intervention, there were conflicts in the region, there was tension, it was difficult for our team to go back to the ground and collect data, which is when we chanced upon this remotely sensed indicators that we thought, okay, if we can't go back, we still want to know what happened to our program before the conflict started, and we want to know whether there was an impact. And our funders, who were the West African Development Bank, also were very interested in knowing. So we used remotely sensed indicators of vegetation and soil moisture to detect changes in crop yield due to the intervention. So as you can see here, between 2016 and 2019, you can see there's like an increase in greenness in these satellite images. And this is not just visual, but also because it's a satellite image, you have certain data associated with it, which can then be measured in the form of an index of vegetation, which we'll talk about a little bit about later. How do you find these indicators? Like what do they measure, etc. And then we also use certain other geospatial characteristics to identify a valid comparison group, because in this case, as is often the case, wasn't an RCT. This was a particular area of intervention that the team had selected. But then we also needed a valid comparison group to see, okay, is it because of the intervention, or is it because, is this a general trend that's happening in the region? So we used satellite data to, as well as some sort of geospatial characteristics of the region to find a valid comparison group, maybe like a similarly sized area that has similar kind of rainfall, similar kind of climate, is close by but not too close by, things like that, which all we could do remotely using publicly available satellite data to find a comparison group. And then we conducted a synthetic difference in difference design to find that there was actually an increase in vegetation in this region, especially in the dry season. We were able to do this because of satellite data. Next slide, please. So another example is our project in Bangladesh, where we did a traditional RCT to encourage farmers to conduct aquaculture. There was some training, there was some information campaigns as part of the intervention that encouraged farmers or gave them more information on how to do it, what are the best practices of fish farming, which is aquaculture. And at the end of the intervention, when end-line data was collected and there was analysis going on, we also noticed as part of the analysis that there was a secular trend of an increase in aquaculture in the region that we studied, which was perhaps not something that we predicted when we started our RCT. And it was difficult to measure this on the ground because it's an expansive region. The study had already been concluded, our end-line surveys had already come back. So we wanted some supplemental explanation for what we were seeing between treatment and control. We weren't seeing a lot of differences in aquaculture habits or pond sizes or number of ponds. So we were again in a situation where we could use remotely sensed data. However, in this case, we actually didn't know where all the ponds in this region were because this is a large region of Bangladesh. So we used a machine learning algorithm combined with satellite imagery to detect ponds on the images. And our idea was that, okay, if we look at ponds that were there in 2019 and in the same region and the same time period, if we see that there was an increase in the number of ponds over time, and if that increase is similar across treatment and control, then we know that there was some changing patterns in aquaculture as a whole across the region, which is something that is difficult to measure on the ground and may not, or is challenging. But we were able to do that by feeding training data to a machine learning algorithm, saying this is what a fish pond looks like, these are the characteristics, this is the shape, and now here's a new region. Can you detect the fish ponds in this region across time? And we found indeed that there was an increase in fish ponds over time across this treatment and control region, which helped us explain some of our findings from our RCT and enhanced our study quite a bit. Next slide, please. The third case study I want to talk about is in Sierra Leone and Guinea. We conducted a supply side intervention on swamp agriculture. So in this region, these are called inland valley swamps, where there was an intervention that had a lot of different parts to it. There was grain buying and transport of the crop yield, where the funder offered to transport the grain that was grown. They also gave them faster growing rice crops, fruits and vegetables, seeds, and things like that. So there was a supply side sort of intervention to encourage farming in inland valley swamps. However, again, in the same situation, it was difficult to physically identify every swamp in the treated region and collect reliable data on vegetation. Again, it was a fragile context. There's conflict going on. It's not very easy to go back onto the field again and again. And sometimes it's also difficult to find every single swamp in this giant region. So we use a machine learning algorithm again in this case, along with a filtering to detect these inland valley swamps.
Hi, Vika. I'm sorry to interrupt. Just you are running out. You have run out of time. I wonder if you could
I'll conclude.
Thank you very much.
If we can go to the next slide, please. So this is our current ongoing study where we are working in Malawi, and we're conducting a traditional RCT right now. And we're looking at outcomes of food security and nutrition. So I just wanted to give you guys an overview of the kind of work we're able to do with these new methods. And we're very open to working with our partners and collaborators. And please reach out if you're interested in any of these methods and would like to implement them in your organization or in your programs. And thank you so much for inviting me to this talk.
Thank you very much. Okay, great. Thanks to all the speakers. Could those in the room come up and sit up here on the stage? And Devika, it's okay, you stay online with us for the question. and answer session.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so questions for any of our speakers in the room. We have microphones that will come around to you. You can't be out of questions. Oh, excellent. Got one here and one here. I'll take both in one go and then we'll carry on.
Thank you for the interesting presentations. No. Thank you for, oh, okay. Thank you for the interesting presentations. My question is for Vika. So you talked about, first of all, I'm very interested in the use of new methods, technologies, AI, machine learning, etc., in program applications. You talked obviously about what your organization mostly does, which is impact evaluation. I was wondering if you could give us also some insights on other program stages where these kind of tools could be applied, for example, program design, or even through implementation for monitoring and continuous improvement.
Thank you. There's another question at the back, I think. We'll take both at once and then we'll move on to the answer.
Thank you. My question is for Aklima with a study in Bangladesh, the ANGEL study. I'm interested in learning, you said the government is committed to scaling this intervention. Is it just the ag nutrition intervention or the ag nutrition gender intervention? I saw in your methods that HKI was implementing the gender component. Who in the government would implement the gender component if they are going to keep it? And do you have any estimates of the cost per household of doing the integrated intervention? Thank you.
Great, thanks. Maybe I'll go to Devika first and then to Akima.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I presented some impact evaluation case studies, but we've definitely used these methods for monitoring and targeting. So at the beginning of a program, you can use it to find comparable regions to conduct your intervention in. Because the nice thing about it is you have this data from, I think, the 60s or the 70s, so you can look at the characteristics of a region going far back in time, and it's high frequency data. It's almost daily, sometimes weekly data. So if you want to find particular regions for your intervention, you can use it before you even start to identify, okay, this is the type of climate, or this is the type of vegetation, or whatever you want to pick. And even for monitoring goes the same, because it's so high frequency. You can monitor a program over time pretty much every day if you have the right satellite data.
Thank you, Akima.
Thank you for your question. So your first question was which combination actually is going for a scale up. So treatment on 5 that included actually agriculture, nutrition, gender. So we have actually submitted the project development performa where actually we focus on this treatment component. And regarding the gender component, yes, they're actually during the research period, Helen Keller International actually engaged for conducting the training, for trainer as well as the farmers trainers. For the scale up, we actually adopted a strategy which we focused in the project for performance. So we actually identified that at the regional level under the Ministry of Agriculture, there are some training institutes, so where there are some professional to conduct their extension training. So what we actually plan to identify those trainer to develop a co-trainer with the help of the trainer who were engaged during the ANGEL period, like some of the trainers from Helen Keller International. Also during that time, there were some professionals from Ministry of Agriculture who were a little bit trained on this. So we have planned actually to develop a co-trainer across the nation who will later on roll out the training as well as the farmers trainer throughout the period. It was a 5 years long scale up project. And during the third question regarding cost study, so actually we have just started the cost study because that time there was it was not planned for doing the costing study, but you can get the result on the costing study. We are under process on data collection and analysis. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? I've got one at the back there and one at the back there. We'll take those two.
Yeah, hello. I'm a director at an AI research company. I had a question for Devika. What percentage of your work is on geospatial and machine learning in terms of the amount of work you put in for your research? Have you looked into language models for Earth observation foundational models to automate your machine learning? This is like a very high edge sort of AI question.
Other question on, I think, the back. Yeah.
Thank you for very nice presentations. I have a question for Pepijn or Pippin, as we know him here. Your difference in intake and difference in dietary diversity is significant, but really small. So I'm wondering, what public health, meaning such a small difference has. I also see that there is a main effect on purchase. So do you think that they are replacing, the vegetables from the home garden with the purchased vegetables, or are they going to use the free up income for something else?
Okay, great. Thanks. First to Devika.
Yeah, thank you for your question. So I am actually part of the data innovations group at 3IE. So our whole mission is to incorporate as much AI and ML where it's relevant into our projects, whether they're impact evaluations or synthesis products. So I cannot say a percentage, maybe I would say 20 to 30% of every project we try to apply data science techniques or AI techniques when possible, and especially in terms of geospatial. If it's an agriculture project or health and nutrition project, we see a lot of value in using geospatial data as an addition to the traditional methods. And we have started exploring using foundational models and large language models for this purpose. And we think that this is very promising, and we're doing some internal experiments and tests to see how it compares to our standard machine learning outputs. As of now, I would say it's still computationally a little bit expensive for everyone to do it, but you'll hopefully hear from us soon, and we'll put something out like a blog or something on our experiments and tests.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Inge. Yeah, the dietary diversity effect is small, and it's as often in interventions like these because we only focus on fruits and vegetables, and they are, of course, only one of the many categories in the dietary diversity score. Still, it's significant. That's important for us. I think more sensitive is for us the kind of the portions of vegetables eaten, and so you saw like almost one additional portion of vegetables. That's about equivalent to 80 grams, and that's actually quite high. So yeah, I think that's for us more important. Now we do find a substitution effect there because clearly the expenditures on buying fruits and vegetables declined. It's maybe a bit unfortunate. Of course, we would like them to maintain market purchases and eat in addition from their home garden. But that's often, yeah, it's motivation for many households to save expenditure on purchasing food. And as you said, also, like we saw clearly, or not clear, we suspect that some of that income saved or expenditure saved was spent on unhealthy foods. Yeah, so that cannot be controlled. Perhaps we need to strengthen the nutritional like component of an intervention like that, right? To nudge people to yeah, adopt a healthy eating pattern. Also, we have to say there that, okay, ultra-processed food increased, but yeah, from low levels, right? If you compare that to our own ultra-processed food consumption is probably quite low, right? So maybe it's not a major worry. Yeah, thanks. Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Any other questions? One at the back and then one here at the front.
Okay, thank you for the nice presentation. So I have one question for the last presenter and one for the first. So for the last one, the Vilka, I just want to know for the images that have been used, which kind of feature did you extract it from the image, and how they have been, how can I say, label the image. And the last one for you, what was the performance of the model that you trained? And for the first sometimes I feel like urban agriculture is not far from home gardening. This is my feeling. And based on that, we know that home gardening are mostly based on chemical fertilizer. So how the case of Bangladesh is ensuring that we are not replicating this method and we are sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think we had one question down here.
Thank you all. I have a query regarding the homestead gardening in the Dhaka. Actually, there are many studies in Bangladesh homestead gardening, but most of them are in rural area. Maybe it is first one. Thank you. But I have a query. I think it is difficult to get the homestead gardening in Dhaka to get such type of gardening. It is better to peri-urban area. I think it is better. I don't know. Did you consider rooftop gardening? In this case, you will get within the Dhaka. One thing. Another thing, when you comparing the impact, did you consider spillover effect or endogeneity effect like this? Thank you.
Thank you. I think I'm remembering right, the first question, there was one for Devika. Should we start with you?
So the first question was about what features did we extract from the images. So we mostly use the satellite bands and created indices for vegetation. So we used NDVI and NDWI, which is the vegetation index and the water index, to see whether there was a growth of plants and crops in that region. And we also have a remote sensing inventory on our website, did out the different indicators that we use, so you could go to the website and look at it. The other question you had was, how did we label the images? This is important for the machine learning part, is the model needs to know, if you look at an image, what is a fish pond and what is not a fish pond and so on. So we had some data from the ground, especially for the swamps, because they're weirdly shaped. So we use some of the ground data to label it. And then we use some other geospatial filtering, like the shape of giving it the shape of the swamp or what is around it in terms of trees and things like that. We weren't completely happy with the performance. I think it was like 80% accuracy. So we ended up doing some manual labeling and drawing after that, which we would like to minimize in the future. But it's challenging depending on the size and shape of the objects that you're trying to detect.
Thank you. I think Femi, it was a question for you. Yeah.
Thank you for the question. However, probably you mixed up my presentation with somebody else's own. First, my study is on maize biomass value web intensification, and in no way, it is in no way related to the home gardening. Then secondly, my study area is in Nigeria, not Bangladesh. So I cannot really talk much about home gardening in Bangladesh. I'm sorry.
Take.
For me, yeah, that's that's okay. But yeah, the question was about our sustainable use of the home gardens and fertilizer use. Yeah, we know that some fertilizer use is often used in the home garden. Pesticides is kind of more rare, I would say. Some households still use it, but actually it's not necessary. because many insects can be just removed by hand on a small scale, like a home garden. Even fertilizer use within our program, the Frontier Foods and Security Program, we test solutions to use to recycle household waste if it can be composted. Actually, you don't need fertilizer. You can create your own nutrients much better, as more safe. In terms of the types of garden, yes, it is a lot of constraints. Indeed, the sample contained a lot of rooftop gardens, which are quite popular, I think, in Bangladesh and Dhaka, because the roofs have typically flat roofs, strong roofs, right? So it's very suitable for rooftop gardening. So I think a large part of the sample, don't know exact the percentage, but was rooftop gardeners in there. With a keyword that rooftop gardeners are, of course, house owners, which are maybe a strata that is not the poorest of the poor, because those people are probably the owners of the house who have access to the rooftop. So that's important to keep in mind. Within the short period of the study, we didn't look at the spillover effects. I think that's, but that is potentially could happen, especially in an urban area where people are very close to each other, and from one roof you can easily look on the other roof. So it's I would expect that there should be spillover effects, but we didn't look into it. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a quick question for Reshma. Everything was really clear, and it looked like there were mainly positive effects sort of across the board with the change in the sort of financing. Did you look at all, I did notice your sort of potentially negative effect was the increase over time of sort of unhealthy foods that were consumed in sort of both groups. Did you look more generally, more widely? Do you have any comparator for that beyond those who hadn't changed their voucher status, or does that make sense as a question? I mean, is it a secular trend, do you think, that irrespective of anything else, there's this increase in unhealthy food consumption, or has the voucher system or the change in the voucher system had any impact on that?
Thanks for that question. So yeah, I mean, both of those groups combined would comprise our entire sample. Yeah. So both groups had this sharp increase in processed foods. But again, the issue is the way that the survey categorizes processed foods. It doesn't tease out, for example, instant noodles compared to like pickles, which is a processed food, but it's not Indian pickles, the preserved pickles. So. So not all of that is unhealthy, but we just know from kind of trends in consumption that most of that is. So yeah, because the results control for the effects of time, I mean, this is sort of above and beyond the effects of time that we see that the expansion of entitlements increase, there's a change from before expansion among those who receive those entitlements.
Controlling for the effects of time. So there could also be a secular trend going on underneath as well, yeah. Okay, thank you. Other questions in the room? I have one over here and one here. Coming thick and fast now. The microphone's going that way, so we'll start on that side and work my way over. Just remind me if I...
Hi, I just have a question on the Bangladesh study, not the urban. Yeah. So you had great interventions, 4 different arms. There was improvement in egg and milk production, but dietary diversity score did not go up significantly in any of those treatment arms. What do you think are the reasons? What happened? Why things didn't change? And what do you should be done in order to improve dietary diversity scores? Because even after interventions, if dietary diversity scores are not moving, then it does make you question. Yeah.
Okay, I think got a couple more. There's one here and one here. Yeah. We'll take both of those and then get the answers.
Thank you. Yeah, Olu, my question is for you. And my question is for you, and congratulations on your PhD. You didn't tell us where you collected that data, because I'm aware there are some cultural factors that may make differences in Nigeria where maize is produced. So can you then explain to us why the women-headed households had more intensification. What are the reasons behind it? And please tell me where the data was collected so that I get a better appreciation of the results. And then finally, what would be the policy implication of such a research? I know the organization you work for, very good in terms of policy recommendations. Thank you.
We'll take one more question, then we'll go to the panel for answers. It's over here.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. A question for Bibijan. In your study, when you looked at the urban farm, or the urban horticulture farming, did the size of it matter? For example, there is encouragement for the vertical urban farming in building. They have it in different states in the US and Europe, and something that we've been thinking about, or globally in the nutrition community, about in urban areas to use every space also to produce food from it. So does the size of the farm matter in terms, because you said like the differences were in some cases small, and in the case that you looked at it, was the price or the cost per unit of production per kilo for produce at home versus bought from the market, was it significantly higher? Speaking from personal experience, for me, like producing a kilo of tomato at home, it was just for the pleasure and joy of it, but was way more expensive than buying it from the store. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's start with Akima.
Hello, thank you for this question. Yeah, regarding dietary diversity, there is a very slight improvement, and which is very aligned with the national level average. And the thing is, if we need to increase the household dietary diversity score, one of the strategy actually, we need to improve the intake of the nuts and seeds. Although we have included this in our BCC, but still, we need more behavior change communication to promote these food groups. Otherwise, we never can improve the food dietary diversity score, because these are the two food groups it's never touched on nowadays. Earlier there are lots of actually recipes prepared with nuts and seeds, and like pumpkin seeds, those are actually, even in my younger age, I saw that people are eating seeds, pumpkin seeds, but nowadays nobody actually eat this. So unless we never increase this as strategy, behavior change communication, or this message, promotion of these messages, also we need to see the translation of this message in the practice level. So then we can improve this. Hope this is your answer of the question. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll pass over to.
Okay, thank you for the question. First, let me apologize with respect to the flow of the presentation. I actually submitted a revised version of the slide that was presented, so that is why I had to skip some parts. Now, with respect to the methodology, the study area for the study area was in North Central Nigeria, specifically Nasarawa State and Niger States were sampled for the study. And as we all know, the culture, especially in that side of the country, whereby the level of involvement of women in farming is quite limited. So majority of those that were sampled in the study that happens to be female gender are actually widow. And this is evidenced in the average age of the female farmers in the area, which was about 55 years of age, while that of male was around 42, 43 years. So that answers the first question. So with respect to the intensification, yes, it was found out that female-headed households intensified the usage of maize than male-headed households. And this could be because of the let me say the sociocultural practice, especially in Nigeria, whereby when it comes to anything related to cooking, it seems to be the primary responsibility of male. So most of these farmers that are sampled, especially the female that happens to be widows, they do this cooking, especially in diverse, using maize in diverse forms, more than the male-headed household.
So that could be the reason why they intensified the usage of maize more than the male-headed household. And with respect to policy intensification, yes, though the effects on nutritional security for both male-headed household and female-headed household was actually significant. But what I realized from the analysis was that the rate at which the effects increases for the female-headed household is about a unit increase in the index of maize usage brings about 16 points increase in the index of nutritional security for the women-headed household, while for the male-headed household, a unit increase in the index of usage brings about 10. So which implies that the effect is actually amplified when it comes to the female-headed household and male-headed household. So with respect to this, policy recommendation will go along the line of ensuring targeted training, especially sensitization training, because the study realized that out of the over 20 potentials of uses in the maize value web, the maximum usage that the study found out was around 7. So which implies more, there is still room in order to explore further in terms of products that can be used. So sensitization training will go a long way in order to improve the intensification within the maize value web, as well as improve nutritional security. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
The urban agriculture in Dhaka is mostly low tech, I would say, like as you saw from the photos in the presentation. So we don't find a lot of, like even hydroponics is quite rare to find, let alone aquaponics, that's very rare. So I think there's a lot of potential actually to increase the productivity a lot if you, with a bit more advanced technologies, because this is mostly containers. But size matters because, I mean, it's a very small fraction in the sample actually had a more substantial size, and you do see that then selling becomes really interesting because then they see an opportunity to earn some income and they will seize that. So if they have size, it would be advantage. Unfortunately, we didn't collect price data because most of, in this economy, it's mostly non-market transactions, right? So we didn't look into price data, so I cannot answer your second question, but thanks.
Thank you. I think we've got time for 1 or 2 more questions. Over there.
Hi, my question is for Reshma, and thank you all for great presentations. Reshma, I just wondered if you could tell us more about the data set used and basically whether there is enough data to perhaps do this kind of analysis, maybe at a state level, or perhaps even disaggregated to a district level, I don't know, to identify locations where the PDS is working well, or these relationships are working particularly well, implications for state governments and so on, or is it limited to a national level analysis, basically? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that question, Greg. So, it's a panel survey of around 40,000 households, which doesn't, we basically are not able to generalize at a state level, let alone a district level. I think what can be done, and what I'd like to do is sort of look at different kinds of analyses that remove, for example, a state like Tamil Nadu or Chhattisgarh that has really high functioning PDS, and then sort of see if the results still hold. Or things like that, but we can't really look at state level differences, unfortunately. But yeah.
Okay. Any final questions? One question online. Okay, I think this is for Femi. In the Nigerian study, was cultural norms myths put into consideration in the BCC on promoting improved dietary intakes among the farmers through female versus male-headed households? Animal sources of food may not be commonly consumed. These people know of the safety effect of heavy carb intake. Well, it says the Nigerian study. So I'm sorry, if whoever sent it in online wants to clarify it slightly, we'll try and answer it. We're just not quite clear. No, I think it must be a different question for a different presentation, another room. Okay, in which case, on that note, I'll let you go for tea, and let's thank our speakers again for some excellent talks. And see you all back in here at 16:50 for the final plenary. A chance to say goodbye.